All right, good. Is it morning? Yeah, why not? Good morning, all people. How are you all doing? Did I scratch myself on now? Who knows? Right, another day and another. Where is? That's not what I want to do. There we go. Right, another day, another nonsense. Oh, but we do have tea, and that means that everything is, of course, okay. So where should we start off with this thing? We are on a branch we shouldn't be on. That's odd. Yeah, we could get rid of that thing. That's fine. Yeah. All right, good morning, Skylar. Hello, S10. Hello, Caleb. Hello, Dottie. Hello, Cuba. Another day to play. Yes, it is. Whoops. It's a day for Game Doll Classic. Yesterday was cooking. What's it? Today is triangles and pink. What is this? Is this one of those Tails games? No. Right. Do we have any weebs in the chat? Because this thing looks 1001% weebish. Made. Oh, close but no cigar. It's an indie game. I'm concerned about the proportion of the head here, right? Did they have like a giant head? I don't know, man. I don't know. Yes, Skylar, there is that too. Right, give me something to work. That is entirely unhelpful. That is literally a copy of that side. Circle. South of the circle. This means nothing to me. Alright, I have no idea what we're looking at here. Oh, shit, really? That is actually being developed here on Twitch? Oh my god. Oh my god. Alright, I actually know. This is a rhythm game and it's being developed here on Twitch. Whew. A lack of money. Do you have to pay to watch them? Aren't they part of your average streaming service? I know my kid watched a lot of anime. Which is part of the streaming services, right? Okay, what do we got? What do we got? Are we live on YouTube? Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. Okay. Your parents have Netflix, but you don't. But are your parents not allowing you? Did they be like, look, Skylar, we got Netflix. And you're like, yay, but you can't watch it. But Papa, I need my daily fix. No, you only watch Weeb TV. Watched on Facebook. That is such a confusing statement. I can't tell whether you're 4 or 40. Okay? Facebook. All right. Now that I understand. I don't want my kid using my phone and or laptop, but we have TVs in the 21st century. You don't really care? Sounds like sour grapes to me, Skylar. All right, enough of that. We're going to do a little bit of programming today. So let's see, where do we leave off with everything? We have Wairu is attempting this thing. And I solved this one. So we're going to mark this as done. Maybe we look at sorting out the code a bit. What is this Facebook you speak of? It's where it's Facebook is also known as an AI test ground, right? Where people will launch their AI bots to farm likes and dislikes from other AI bots. So it's basically just two AIs talking to each other, right? They are published somewhere. They are available here, maybe. We'll try. Yes! I know what things are. Whew. Okay. No, I will say what I said. It's not my fault. You can't have a normal. I'm kidding. Nfei. How does Nfei becomes Nfei? How? Okay. I think you mean meta. And they did not develop Instagram. Oh my god, Skylar. This is what happens when you let rich people rewrite history, okay? I developed Instagram when I was 5. Living in your parents' basement. It's used a lot by the older generation. Yeah, okay, calm down now. But you're right. I think that's Reddit. Anyway, okay, before we get into it, let's go back to the bugs round 2. So what was it? Yeah, okay. So let's see if we can do something about the runtime here to make it a little bit less rubbish. It's now unnecessarily warm here. Take it down, right? Okay. So this thing has a lot of noise going on, and I wonder if we can reduce some of this noise. Is this really what I want to be working on today? Well, this has to be done, so maybe it is. The tick function is probably where most of this nightmarish stuff happens. So let's do this. No, that is not what I wanted to do. Go there. Wrong button. There we go, right? Okay, so... see that flickering? I don't know if you see the flickering. So I fixed the resize bug, but that is still happening, and it bothers me. I tell you what. Ooh. Well, that might just be the delay of the resize event. See, that's introducing something new, Skylar, and we need to make sure that we have a strong foundation before we introduce something new. I would love to have the state thing going, but I think before we do that, we are going to make this thing happen. Also, it's very unlikely that I'm ever gonna touch Expression RS on stream because of the trauma that will come from it. But it probably is the next logical thing to do. Well, we do. The more stuff you put on a janky foundation, the more jank propagation you have. And when you have jank propagation, then you have goblins in your code. So this dirty widget thing here, this one is interesting. And I say interesting because it isn't at all even a little bit interesting. What we could do with the dirty widgets is we could actually store not just the widget ID, but whatever change we want in there as well, right? So for this thing, what if we store what we're supposed to, what change we're supposed to propagate? So then when we were to apply this throughout, then we could see, we can do this. Now we need a name, all right? And the first person to suggest Bob will be timed out for 10 minutes. No, you won't be. You just have to live with your lack of imagination. Okay. All right, fine. Bob it is. Now, we need to store some value in here that decides what it is that the widget needs, right? It needs something, and we need to know what it is. So when we push, we're going to have a widget ID, and we're going to have one of these as well. When we go to apply, this widget needs layout thing. It's going to take this change and we're going to match on south.0. And if this thing is layout, then this is what we'll do. If this thing is paint, then we can't have paint. It can be position. That needs position is true. Hello, Danny. How are you doing? So this is actually gonna give us quite a lot. Call it dirt. Okay, well, I like your original thinking there, but I'm not sure dirt is a good idea, because it might not be very coherent, right? I'm going to be, I'll be right back, hang on. I'm still not entirely well. Oh, come on, man. Cheap viewers now. I know they started to do that too. Oh, man. Should we just pin this or what, right? Let's just... no, don't do that. Whatever makes you happy, Danny. Whatever makes you happy. And born shell. Oh my god, now you've gone too far. Okay. Alright. Before we start insulting everyone, then we need to come up with a name for this thing. And then in our overlay, inside default, overflow, not overlay. And then this whole dirty business, this thing should return that, and it should be if self.is dirty, then that's what we need. I guess it's the needs of the widget, however. So we can actually call that... we could call that needs. Widget needs. Okay. So we will have a pub enum widget needs nothing. Redraw, position, and layout. Actually, what's the point of having default for this thing? There isn't really one. There's no need for that to be copy clone either. There's no harm in it being copy clone, but it doesn't have to be though, right? Okay, so that would kind of work. Okay. Right then. There's a lot of D in there. Eep. Okay, so there we go. So when we push, we're gonna push our needs in here. Bloop. All right. There we go, right? Okay, so this solves it. So we can now have that happen. We have another issue, though. we have another issue here, and that is, I wonder if we could maybe change this to container needs then. So yes. Right. Oops, macro time. Okay. And then here, widget needs nothing. Okay. It needs nothing. It has everything it could possibly want. So we're making a lot of this stuff up, right? This doesn't exist yet. And now it does exist. So we're inside widget module. Expose that. Probably shouldn't refer to this cycle. So we should probably not refer to this by the cycle. So represent the needs of widgets. You know what? Bad documentation is bad. We're going to ignore that. Okay, now we need to go to the runtime, which is fun time. And we're going to change all this to work. Oh, right. Is this Rust analyzer being shipped again? So you gotta trust yourself more than your tools sometimes, right? Although we don't have the widgets here. That's a bit sus, isn't it? Yeah, we do. Okay. Why? Oh, shit. We're in widgets. I'm looking at the wrong thing. All right. So that should just be needs. Now, don't add confusing lingo there. Wraps a widget and retain some geometry for the widget. There we go. Okay, so now we could we can just walk through this and fix all the bugs. So reset layout. This would mean... This one I'm a little bit unsure of, whether we're going to keep this thing or not. For now, we can just say widget needs layout. Then this thing is just going to be widget needs layout. You need to be in scope. And then we're applying the update tree pathfinder here. I don't know if this is true. So this one is a little bit funny. So this is a result of we're making a change to a widget through some state. Maybe we changed the background color from red to blue, right? So we need to update the widget. However, this change is actually not indicative of a layout, only a paint. But if we do that granular optimization here, we'll win a lot by doing this, but we'll also lose some because the code becomes more complex. I'm new here. What are you building today? I'm working on polishing a library we've been working on for quite a while now, trying to get it ready for release. Hello, Enrico. How you doing? So here we say if let needs equal to, although this is technically wrong. This is, we should not do it this way. What are you complaining about? Because these needs could be nothing. So if can we bind inside of matches? Probably not. I guess what we could do is we could match on this thing. But then that's also going to be wrong. We do this. Oh, we don't know about this one either. Okay, so we can't shortcut that one. Short circuit that one conveniently. When will this wretched illness leave? Come on. Felt like I was having a good day today, and I was like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do some streaming, and then instantly death. All right. All right, let's do something stupid then. we'll do that. Whoops. Why is that not the first thing? Here, we could just pass this on, right? So we're just transferring the widget needs over to the widget. So like that. Hello, Hap. How you doing? Where did you go? Container? No, we want overflow. This is what we're gonna grab. Okay, there we go. Right, so here's the thing. We would need to pass in widget needs layout here, because this is related to the layout. But this is also a serious level of damagery, okay? Because we don't need this, okay? So we have this reset layout and we have the dirty widgets. Now, ideally, we'd be able to fill dirty widgets with the widget IDs and take it from there, but that's gonna be more expensive than doing this, which is a bit frustrating. Hello, Yogurt. I'm doing alright, it's Hap. You got a job? Nice, congratulations. That's super cool, it's Hap. I'm very happy to hear that. Good work. What should we do here? So it would be more correct to fill dirty widgets, but it's probably faster to call reset layout. There is no way of iterating through that. You know what we could do? We could change this to mark widgets, and then we pass in dirty widgets in here. Except that doesn't work. Because we have no means of... I mean, yeah, we could pass it in here, right? Eep. Alright, we're not gonna read no error messages. Errors are for babies. If you read them, you got skill issue. Obviously, learning how to program for real here, right? Okay then. Typos just builds character. What do you want? Right, so there we go, right? I wonder what it'd be like to program without a screen. How far do you think we get? Not very. But like, what would you be allowed to have? Maybe some voice feedback, or at least some indicator. Interesting. Well, that was a waste of time because... Well, we can actually use that. This isn't great, by the way. This feels very jank. Yeah, I think you would definitely use a screen reader if you're blind trying to program. Okay. Will this work now? Yeah, it works. At first I didn't see any flickering. So this odd delay we see, that's a result of the resize event being slow, I'm sure. You know what? I'm okay with this. So this makes it a little bit better. Does it mean that we have the fix in place now? Can we include... No, it's the wrong one. There's a bug in there. We're going to deal with that bug as well. I don't know why that bug's there, but it is. So they don't need to collect anything here. So scroll up, scroll down. Scroll, set this thing to dirty. If it's dirty, then returning position. Can we return paint instead? We could not return paint instead. Okay, now we have to do an optimization on the positioning here. Well, that's what Wire is working on. So we could hack this in ourselves if we wanted to. Now, this is a lot of nonsense, as you can see, but this will make sense. If we don't have nonsense. Okay, so if we don't have this flag set and it does not contain this thing, then we're gonna continue. Bollocks. That wasn't right. So we get the position. If the position is not, if the position is within, then that's true. If this thing is true and it doesn't contain, then return. Was that right? Yeah. Look how fast this is now. If you don't know how fast that is, let me show you. This. You see how we're beating the pants out of Ratatouille with our 314,000 widgets? We can just scroll as days long here. We're just way faster. Ratatouille is still scrolling. So once virus fixes in, this thing will be applicable to all widgets. Man, it's still going, right? This thing will be applicable to all widgets, which is pretty exciting. But there's a bug in there, so we're gonna have to fix that bug. So how do we fix that bug? Through the magic of water. Okay, so let's patch some of this in now. Git switch widget needs -p. Yeah, delete that. Add that. Why are we passing the glyph map? So we can resize. So this fixes the resize bug as well. This is some stuff I got from Museum today that we're trying out. We have a new output instead of a draw 2, instead of standard out. Should give us a tad performance bump. Resize fixes that bug. And we have the begin and end synchronized update there. Let's have a look at docs rs cross term. We want to look at the synchronized update, right? Commands must be executed, queued for execution, otherwise they do nothing. Use end to leave the entered alternate screen. When rendering the screen of the terminal, the emulator usually iterates through each visible grid cell and renders its current state. With applications updating the screen at high frequencies can cause tearing. This mode attempts to mitigate that. When the synchronization mode is enabled, the following render calls will keep rendering the last rendered state. The terminal emulator keeps processing incoming text and sequences. When the synchronized update mode is disabled, the renderer may fetch the latest screen buffer state again, effectively avoiding the tearing effect by unintentionally rendering in the middle of an application screen update. So this is our render calls now. I don't even know what that looks like. Let's take the animate example. Let's see if this has any impact on this at all, right? Maybe it's... I'd say that it has quite a substantial impact on this thing. And not a good one. I think we are not gonna do that. Had nothing to do with that. So something else has changed. What could that be? It's not that either. Why is it doing that? Well, that's a bug. Where did that come from? I guess why know what we're doing today then? Yummy bugs. All right, let's see if there's anything in here that can have an impact on that. And then we'll flush that one, yeah. Sadly, yes, bug fixes. Not overly excited about that. I thought we were done with bug fixing in general, but no. Turns out I'm to do some bugs somewhere. What's going on there? Which line are we on? 71. Nope. Well, first of all, this thing can go. Not only can it go, but this entire function should be removed. It will empty a cell, but it will do nothing in terms of style. So, bye. No, can't be that. Okay, abort. Yes. Widget needs. So this is a bug. We fixed the resize bug here. And what else did we do? Fix the resize bug and something else. Widget needs and resize fix. I'm guessing it's the widget needs that's causing the grief here. Okay, hang on, slow down now. This is fine, this is fine. This is fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. It isn't the simplest language, no. But it also depends a little bit on what kind of expectations you put on yourself and how you deal with these expectations, right? Could be that you're getting in your own way. If you're expecting it to be easy and then it isn't meeting your expectations, what happens is that you still believe the language is easy, but you feel bad about yourself. You're trying, baby. Oh, you know, there's no saving you then. I just. Okay, so git commit. And we have a bug fix. Resize. And then we have a feature, which is widget needs. Did I Yes. So git switch to dev. Yeah, so this is obviously an artifact of... I'm kidding. So this is obviously an artifact of the needs, of the widget needs being introduced. So even though I thought I was in lockstep with the changes we made, I wasn't, and I introduced a bug. So do we roll back, or do we simply fix the issue? I notice that there is some twitching happening over there. It's not smooth enough. And that is not because of my bad math, okay? There's a different reason for that. So we're gonna figure that one out as well. Hello, survival. What if position and layout are both needed? Well, Skylar, I'll show you something here. When we do the layout, we are saying, oh, hang on. Yeah, this is the old code, right? When we do the layout, we're saying that it needs the position. So once you've done a layout, you always need a position. You don't say that you need layout and position. By needing layout, you will always need position as the next step, right? Well, that was a joke, need job coder. But if you're, so, okay, jokes aside though, if you're getting introduced to Rust and your first Rust project is going to be done with Bevy, then there's a very likely chance that you are going to struggle because Bevy is quite complex and has a lot of, not only does it introduce a lot of things that might not be entirely idiomatic Rust, but it also introduces a lot of concepts that you have to learn if you don't already know them, right? So jumping into Bevy is a little bit like saying, I'm going to learn C programming, so let's work on some kernel drivers, or I'm going to learn Python, so let's dig into the innards of TensorFlow, whatever, right? I don't think that Bevy is a good place for anyone to start the Rust journey, right? I think there are significantly lower barrier of entries into the programming world of Rust, right? Nice save on my word stumble there. So yes, to answer your question, Skylar, if you ever need layout, you will automatically need position, right? And if you ever do position, you will always need paint. But herein lies the rub. We are not always painting. Now, every time you perform a layout, the next logical step is always going to be to position. So the widget cycle goes through layout, position, paint. So if you do a layout, you will have to do position within the same frame as the next step. There is never a case where you're going to do position and then have to do layout again. Set up the ORM. So where are you in your Rust journey though, Nijob? Are you somewhere? Are you comfortable programming Rust? Do you feel like you got a good grasp of the ownership system? Do you feel like generics and traits are like nothing? And have you made it that far in your Rust journey that it's logically sound to tackle things that are heavy abstractions around external things like databases and what have you, right? So I think what is actually happening here is that needs paint is always going to be true. The only time we don't need paint, so I see what the problem is here. The only time we don't need paint is when we are doing positioning or layout. So what we call nothing should effectively be paint. How much time did you spend understanding the concepts of Rust? Neat job. Let me see if I can have any kind of valuable input into your Rust journey. The spiritual Rust journey. So the bug that we just experienced is the fact that paint always has to happen, but we say that it doesn't. You watched the course 5 hours. Have you read the book? If I let's see. No, I'm not gonna talk about that. What would be a good example? Okay, do you understand why this is not compiling? Right. Can you tell me why this code isn't compiling? Right. Can you link to the course? I'm interested in the course now. Is it a paid for course or is it like a free online course? A YouTube course. Oh, please link to it. We'll have a look at it. A is null. Nope. There is no null in Rust. Well, there is null. There is, well, there is a null pointer, right? Because you have to be able to represent null coming from other languages, right? So this thing would generate a null pointer, but it is not null in that sense. It doesn't return a reference to a string. So, but it does return a reference to a string. It returns a reference to A, right? Okay, what about this thing, right? So I'm not trying to trip you up. I'm just trying to get a grasp for where you are in your Rust journey, right? What is the meaning of the static? What is the meaning of this? All right? Do you know what the meaning of this is? I'm just grabbing random things from Rust and then I'm just trying to gauge where you are in your Rust journey, right? It's perfectly fine to say, okay, so what about this? Right, is this part of the course? Will it tell you about this? 42 is a good guess, but it's wrong. Is this part of the course? Okay, so that means, okay, the first thing I showed you was a lifetime trait bound, okay? And the second thing I'm showing you was just a trait bound, okay? So you're saying we have trait X, and anything that implements X have to implement the debug trait as well, right? So, for instance, if I have a struct here called foo, which is, I very rarely call my structs foo, but we're gonna do this for now, right? And I go to import X for foo, right? This will not compile because foo does not implement debug. But if I do this, this will not compile because we have satisfied this trait bound. I don't think that I would be comfortable recommending someone who doesn't know this to deal with anything that has to do with async Rust, because that requires traits and generics to be understood to at least some degree. And I certainly wouldn't throw them in the deep end with Bevy because that's a very complex project, right? Static is a lifetime that means that static is a lifetime that says this has to live for the duration of the program, in short. But a lifetime bound is not the same as a lifetime on a value, right? So I think, neat job. I think you should continue with Rust, but you should find something that has a lower barrier of entry, okay? Do you have a link to the course? I wouldn't mind like skimming through the course to see if there's any, like, where would you go next after that, right? I would not mind doing that. And the reason this does not compile is because the Rust compiler cannot determine if the return string slice, the reference here, has a lifetime of A or B. It's impossible for it to determine what this thing is. Because we have two references here. We have two values with different lifetimes here. It's impossible for the compiler to know which lifetime that is. You might look at the A here and say, but look, inside the function body, we can determine it. But that's not how the compiler works. The compiler won't look here and say, oh, it's A. Well then, right? It will look at this part, known as the function signature, right? I think you're doing very well with your Rust skills, Skylar. Don't sell yourself short. I'm always delighted when really young people have really good skills in programming that is in our community. Like Trolled Woods is one of the, we haven't seen him for a while, but he was when I started streaming, he wasn't even allowed to legally drink, and it was just really good at analytical thinking and logical brain, right? 13-year-old me was definitely better. I don't know, Skylar. But the thing is, the curse of being young and smart is if you are arrogant, older people will certainly not help you. And that's sad. I mean, don't be an arrogant brat, but no one's accusing you now, Skylar. But there is a friction point there. I mean, we saw this with Aaron Swartz, right? Oh, you found it. Good work. Let's have a look. Okay, let's get some volume going. And let's watch this at probably... No, sleep timer. When did that happen? 1.25 at least. Whew, oh man, 6 hours of Rust. Oh wow, Crimson, holy mana, how you doing? Jeepers peepers, mate. Thank you so much. How you doing? Wow, thank you so much for 25 gift subs. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That I really appreciate it. Oh my god, thank you so much, Crimson. That's so nice of you. Thank you. How you doing, buddy? We're just checking out a course here that Job has gone through, and we're gonna see what we would do after this thing, right? So we can look at this immediately and realize that all of this stuff, 1, 2, and 3 is gonna be irrelevant. These are like bootstrapping things. Thank you for the follow. Again, Crimson, thank you so much. It's insane. Thank you. So we don't actually need to worry about 1, 2, and 3 here. So can we jump to okay, we jump to variables here. At least the project is nicely laid out, right? The video is nicely laid out for this, right? I'm doing good. Oh, you went to RustConf. How was it? Was it good? All right. Okay, yeah, so we're going to get to that. Show us functions. That's fine. Okay, now I don't see ownership mentioned anywhere here, and I don't see any references yet. So we're gonna sort of blast forward a little bit here. I do see ranges, but again, no mutability. Yeah, we do have some mutability here then. Okay, so we've introduced we've introduced ownership through copy types, which is bad. I don't think that was their intention to do. And we have mutable variables. Very nice. Montreal was a great place too. Yeah, that sounds very cool. Okay, so now we're going to get to some heap allocated values, right? So maybe we'll get into references and the likes here. But I can tell you immediately, Job, that none of this is specifically talking about traits and trait bounds and generics. You're going to touch on them on option result, but I'm going to assume that this thing is very lacking. I would say that one of the largest parts of the language is missing from here. So let's just hop through some of this stuff. Let's go to structs. Maybe structs will introduce generics. All right. No generics. Maybe something on enums. No generics there. No traits. Nope. None of that either. When you see an enum called shapes, do you instantly think, so this guy is a Java programmer? There is traits. Okay, hello C3. Part 2 has those. Where's part 2? Past 3 hours. I don't see it listed in there. Okay, pattern matching, super cool. I love that they're covering that, so that's good. And like, this is 6.5 hours almost. You're not going to cover everything in here. It's understandable. Okay, did he just refer to none as null? I might have to be less polite about this video now. Okay, let's move on. Canceling crime committed. No, obviously not. Obviously not. But I would have liked to see less illegible scribbles and more. Okay, so here we get into generics, all right? So this is them showing an enum. Now that makes sense. Well, it makes sense if you understand JavaScript. It doesn't make sense if you don't know JavaScript. Then it's like, hey, you're using a language I don't know to describe a language I don't know. Thank you. I find myself as a programmer talking to you guys who are programmers using non-programming metaphors, and it's so dumb. All right. Why are you casting the index? You're not storing this anywhere, right? So this would arguably take up the same amount. Never mind. Let's not get into nitpicky. That's gonna. Okay, so we are somewhat talking about generics here, but don't seem to really go into it. Let's see. Results should be about the same. Oh, wait, hang on. I don't hear what he's saying quite, but if you don't understand it, it's fine, but it's not. If you don't understand it, it's fine. It's not fine. You're glossing over the whole concept of generics, right? I know. Anything before 2 hour mark, just general coding principles. All right, so should we... so it's useful to know about these things. Okay, here we go. Ownership, borrowing, and references. But that one, we want to get to generics then. Part 2, vectors. All right, you can't have vectors without generics. So let's have a look at this thing. I went through the book and Rust things, made some simple to-do list app with SQLite, and still can't understand shit about static lifetimes. I feel like I'm forcing myself to do this, and it was miserable. Don't force yourself to do things. Yeah, so actually static lifetimes is probably the most simple one of lifetimes. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying that because if you have a static lifetime, you never have to worry about it. But to create a static lifetime, to create something with a static lifetime requires a little bit of arcane magic, possibly. You can do things by creating string literals and such, and they're fine. But if you have something like a heap allocated own string, you want to make that into something with a static lifetime, that involves leaking memory, intentional, and doing other things, right? I like the little like highlighting thing it's got, right? The little laser beam thing. Bulk leak everything, yeah. More than one value in a single data structure that puts all the values next to each other in memory. This is called contiguous memory, right? So yeah, and it's a vector is homogeneous, which means that you can only store one given type in the vector. You cannot have different types in the vector. And that makes sense because how are you going to do the memory layout, right? If you have one type that is 8 bytes, another type that is 12 bytes, how can you jump from an offset to another, right? You would have to go through every single one of them, right? Okay, yeah. Write a function takes a vector as an input and returns a vector with even values. Okay, we're not going to do that. Hash map. We don't care about hash map. If you know about vectors, you're going to know about hash maps ish. Iterators. Now this is a hefty topic. Iterators are pretty chunky and they are really cool because you can chain iterators. You can do so many cool things with iterators. And iterators are lazy, which means you can have an incredibly large collection of data. And then you can write all these transformations around it. You can map values to other values. You can do so many things, right? And when you start iterating over this thing, maybe you just want to do the first 10 iterations. It doesn't matter how many values you have, right? You're not actually paying for the stuff you're not using, right? Which is very good. Iterators are definitely one of the highlights of Rust, yes. Oh no, did I? How did I do that? What did I say that implied that? So this isn't bad, right? This isn't a bad video. I do think that we are missing trait bounds in here, and traits maybe. Let's have a look. No, generics and traits. So this is, if you're gonna do anything with Rust that is, if you're gonna do anything with Rust that is touching async runtimes and things like that, you are most likely gonna run into generics and traits, because the future inside Rust, when you generate a future, that is an implementation of a trait, and there is no such thing as async Rust. I should just end the sentence there, right? There is no runtime built into the standard library, is what I meant to say, which means you need an external runtime. The only thing the standard library gives us is a series of traits to implement. Generics from the live meetup. Okay, right. I was going to say, is it going to skip that? All right, so here we have a trait bound, and I'm hoping he's going to get into this thing, but I feel like we're like a couple of seconds into generics and we're already looking at trait bounds. When I talked about generics in the past, I have purposely omitted trait bounds. So if we take trait bounds away, then generics are quite limiting what we can do with them. We can use them for storage, we can use them to represent absence of value, but we already have the option for that. We can use them to represent something like an either. It's either A or B, right? And it's all reasonably simple when we're working with generics and we don't have any trait bounds, right? So we can have an enum, like an either, that is either A or B. And all we have to do here is say that A is A and B is B. So now we can have a value that is either A or B. What is A or B? We don't know, right? We don't care. We just know that they are two types. They're not two different types because they could technically be two of the same type. We can make a type alias here where we say that this type is either a string or a string, right? This is perfectly fine to do. It doesn't make any sense to do so, but we can do so, right? Or we can represent a number and a string. Right? It can be either one or the other, right? But this is the limitations of generics without trait bounds. Let's see where they're going with this now. Yeah, the either type, yeah. I wish I knew what he was pointing to when he says, I'll get to this if we have time. Hello, Akira. Thank you so much, Voodoo. How similar interfaces to traits vary. If you want to form your internal metaphors around programming and to support your mental model around Rust, I would say you can definitely think of traits as interfaces. There is more to it, obviously, but without getting into the pedantic hellscape that is programming conversations, I would say interface, traits, pretty similar. Are you familiar with PHP? I have not programmed PHP for 3 decades. I don't know. I don't have time for that, but we do have a channel on the Discord for Project Showcase. So if you want to share that with the community, you can do so there. That's a shame. I think he's talking about the trait bound and he's glossing over the trait bound. Hello, Temporis. And by every time you call this with a different type, you get the monomorphization, right? This string variable is giving me brain. It keeps displaying as 0. How are you printing it though? So as someone who don't understand TypeScript, I'm not part of this audience, right? So I'm just going to skip this. So this is TypeScript. So I have this doesn't mean anything to me, right? Wow, that's a shame. So far, they glossed over the trait bound, which is very important when it comes to this. But I guess we need to understand traits before we can talk about trait bounds. So I'm hoping after traits, they will trait bounds. There we go. So maybe this is actually in here, Nijob, and you just have to watch this again. You know what? I should have asked you a question, Nijob, that I didn't. That is very important. How much time have you spent practicing what you've been watching? So you watch a bit of the video, then you write a bit of code. How much of that have you done, right? Okay, so we can skip this because we know how trait implementations work. We know what they are. I want to get to trait bounds. Just a basic as API. I don't think bums needs APIs, but I see what you mean. I think you might have to go through this again, but I would recommend. Have you read the book? The book is free to read and pretty good, so it might be worth skimming through the book as well. So we're not overly interested in trait implementations by themselves. We want to see the trait bounds in use, right? So this hurts me a little bit, right? The explicit return here and using string from, but okay. All right. Okay, so we're getting into impulse trait in arg position, right? Pain helps you there, but it kind of does, though, right? It kind of does. So impulse trait in arg position is all well and good, but I think trait objects should probably be mentioned here. But I think that's gonna be outside of the scope of what they're doing here. Again, I'm not seeing any trait bounds, so let's keep hopping through this. That's just a convenience thing. We don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Oh, but then they are adding trait bounds here. T is not a struct. T is for a type, so it doesn't have to be. So it could be an enum just as well. But again, let's skip the nitpicky stuff. I'll try to. Okay, now I think we're gonna get to this. Okay, on a side note, this is why I do not use autocomplete. Look at this. All right, so he's going to write out summary, which he could have written out without pausing. But because he has the word sum in there, he's going to probably take twice as long getting the code on screen. So, pause, all right? Anyway, so they are covering trait bounds. Because meth. Oh, I don't, C3. I have LSPs the day is long, right? Check this out. Want to go to definition? Bam, there we are, right? I just don't have any visual noise in my editor other than the code. Okay, so they are actually covering trait bounds. Okay, then. I think what you just have to do, need job, is either watch this again, and this time, every chapter that you watch, you can probably start from variables, right? You have to practice. You have to write code around this stuff and try it out because they are covering a lot. I mean, they're not going into any depth of anything, right? They're not telling you what trait bounds are. They're telling you that they exist, but that's it, right? Virtual text, because it's insanely noisy and adds zero value for 99.9% of your time, right? It's like there's a warning there, but you're not dealing with warnings yet. Here's an unused variables. I know, I just wrote it, right? There's like this constant, it's like living with Twitch chat, okay? I don't think I can deal with that, right? Okay. So the reason lifetimes are complicated, and I've said this 1,000 times as well, it's not because lifetimes are complicated. Lifetimes aren't complicated on their own. They're actually very simple. The thing that makes lifetimes complicated is understanding how to follow them, right? Well, I'm not talking about everyone, C3. That is right and that is wrong, okay? You are going to use, you are using lifetimes all the time. The question is actually about lifetime annotations, right? So if you're using a reference, then you're using a lifetime, but there is no other lifetime associated with anything else around this reference, perhaps. So there is no reason to annotate the lifetimes, which means we end up with lifetime elisions, which is when we're allowed to elide or rather not write out the lifetime. That's incredibly dark, Crimson. I think lifetime errors from the compiler has been abysmal from the start. I say abysmal, but they have improved a lot. But earlier lifetime errors could really have you scratching your head out. Scratching your head out? Ah, we'll go with it. So this is actually addressing the issue that I was showing. I don't know why we have a generic argument here and it's irrelevant for this, but this thing here is kind of what I was talking about, right? When we're looking at a function signature, this is how we determine the validity of the lifetimes, whether we're allowed to elide them or not. And in this case, you are not, because you have two references, which means you have two lifetimes, and you have to determine what lifetime each one of these have in the context of this function, given that you are returning something with a reference. If this thing wasn't returning anything with a reference, then these two would not have to be annotated, right? That would have been fine. I'm gonna skip some of this stuff. And the reason you don't have to annotate the lifetime here is because you have ownership of the string. So there is no references to reason about here. Okay. Okay, I feel like we are talking about lifetimes, but we've certainly gone away from any lifetime annotations so far. We're pretty far in here, and we are still not covering lifetimes. Here we go, right? Yes, so this is the classic example that we give when we talk about lifetimes, right? Now, I'm really curious to see if he's going to mention the function signature, because this is, I think this is an underrated understanding when it comes to lifetimes and functions. It's because you can reason about the function body, but the compiler doesn't. Wait, you know that it's not valid, right? Because of the conversations we've had. So here they're introducing another issue. Well, first of all, answer is only declared, and actually it is declared, but I was going to say it's not mutable, but it's never initialized, so this is actually fine. But however, looking at this code, you can probably see that if A and B have the same lifetime, and we're returning string 2, which is created inside the scope, that means that string 2 is going to expire at the end of the scope, and the answer exists outside of the scope. We're going to use it outside of the scope. So they cannot simply have the same lifetime, right? As a matter of fact, as far as we're concerned, A has to outlive B, and we can express this specifically with lifetimes, but yeah. Hello, Wyra, how are you going? Yes, and a dangling pointer is one of those things that Rust prevents you from having, right? Unless you intentionally create them, right? Real weird language, Rust or Brazilian, or which the language would be Portuguese, right? Yeah. All right. So if we are passing in A as the first reference and B is the second reference, and this is the second reference, then we can never return a reference to B from here. So this function, either you have to move this print line into the scope, you have to remove the scope, or well, I mean, those are your two options now, right? Or never return B. And if you're never going to return B, you still have to express that up here, right? It doesn't matter what you do inside the function body. You still have to express that up here. I cannot stress that enough. All right, that's an interesting take on it, but we're going to skip that. Let's get to... Yeah, I think you kind of like covered this now. I feel like we need to get into why instead of talking about the lines here. Okay, here we go. All right, so what you've done here is you're saying that the value you return from here has the lifetime of A. And because you have two values here, so input, Rust is going to say that string 1 and string 2 has the same lifetime. So of course we have to shrink the lifetime of string 1. So if we were to reassign string 1 here, it would become invalid. Morning, Scott. Just give me a second. Right, I have to be somewhere today, which is why I have to have my phone on me. All right. Okay, so I think we covered pretty much all this stuff, right? I just wish they wouldn't use explicit return. All right. Okay, let's get to it. That's one way of putting it, right? I'm trying to figure out where to recommend that anyone goes after looking at this course, but I think the book so far. Okay. All right, so this is pretty covered. I think you'll find if you were to hang on, we're jumping into multi-threading here. If you were to checkpoint, no one's using scope threads, even though we have them now. So let's get this back up. So yeah, the video is probably quite all right, knee job. I would just say you have to watch through it again and you have to practice, right? You have to watch a section and then write some code. But I would encourage you to dive deeper into some of these concepts once you feel like you have them. And don't start with Bevy or an ORM or anything like that. Because anything that's going to touch on async Rust or things like an ECS is going to have so much baggage that's going to be difficult to unpack unless you've internalized a lot of the concepts. So you can think about them abstractly. But in the beginning, it's going to be a case of just constantly trying to remember what half the things are, right? I have to click your link since you have a bunny in front of you. Why do you have a bunny in front of you? Put the bunny away. The shortest lifetime satisfied both items is what A gets set to. Yes, which means that we could accidentally shrink a lifetime, right? Is there a way to know in a project how to determine where to work on next with respect to reducing clones? Is it a case of studying the code or are there any tools you know of? Why are you reducing clones? You could just search for all the clones. It might not make sense to reduce the clones. What about Solana? Solana is a language that is similar to JavaScript, I think, and it has very little to do with Rust other than the fact that the compiler was written in Rust. Do you need to learn Rust even if you just want to be a framework developer? What's a framework developer in this case? If the frameworks are written in Rust, then yes. If not, then no. No Rust and Solana blockchain. If you don't want to learn Rust and you want to learn Solana, then you should stop learning Rust and start learning Solana, right? So I think if that's your goal, is that your interest, then yeah, go for it, right? I think the V8 JavaScript engine, which powers Node.js, is predominantly written in C++. I don't think you need any C++ knowledge to use JavaScript. Okay, so we had this newly introduced bug here, which was a result of, well, we're on the wrong branch, git switch to widget needs. So we end up with this blinking now as we're drawing this thing. And the reason it seemed to almost become stable is because we're increasing the frequency. And when you see it start to blink again, is because we're using an easing function that reduces the amount of time we spend between moves. So it's going to look like it disappears and flickers, right? Which it does. This is a result of not constantly redrawing this thing. So we should instead fix that maybe. So we could start with that by simply changing our widget needs. So we're going to get rid of nothing. If I could just go there, but I cannot, because Rust Analyzer has soiled itself again, right? And this is very frustrating when this happens. It could be a result of changing branches, maybe. No, we're good. So it's going to be in the widget module, and we're going to have the needs here, and we're going to get rid of nothing. So the widget need of nothing is no longer a thing. Instead, we're going to have paint as the only need that we have, right? So paint becomes the equivalent of nothing here. And this will now fix the bug. All right. How does one hold a nothing? I guess you don't. Having null hands. I guess if you close your hand, you're holding nothing. Then you could make various ridiculous arguments that you're holding air or whatever. But if you do that, you're just a silly person. Up to hash maps. I think where Rust becomes complicated is really when we're talking about traits and trait bounds. So that's probably, I understand what people mean when they say we need more intermediate content and less basic content. And okay, let's see. So we fixed that bug now. So we're gonna patch that in. And that was a very simple fix to add. Let's have a look at the cycle run. So we're making changes. We were making changes, but we never painted the thing that had... Okay, so that makes sense. There's an optimization that can be done, but we have now solved one challenge. So we've done this now. So I'm gonna stick a me on there and move it down. That's what Wire is working on, so we're gonna leave that one. Is dirty is too broad, needs to specify layer. Okay, so we've done this too. Opaque flag. So this one, I don't know if we're gonna do this one, right? Type bounds propagation for sure, and also case that appears simple. Could you give me an example of that, Itharak? My job is whack on full stack mobile dev. I don't envy you that. I did Objective-C in 2009 for a few years, starting 2009 and onwards with the rise of the Apple mobile. I actually didn't mind Objective-C as such, but it really isn't the best thing in the world. That's for sure. Is that the reason why you're learning Need Job? Is it because you want a different job? It's difficult, Etherek, for me to know whether you're a victim of the borrowed checker as it stands today, or whether you are passing something in that is altering the lifetime and of the return value, and you're using the return value. I went with Box White's Land or Delete, and I would not recommend them if you're going to use your keyboard around other people. I am a Rust programmer, which by definition means that I am constantly alone, so Box White is suitable for me. If you find the code Itheract, seems like an interesting conversation if you can shrink it down to like a reproducible example. There are many things in Rust that is not possible today that are quite frustrating. Things like maybe this. So we can return opt. So this is fine, but if we were to check if this option is empty before, right? So we match on the option. If it's some, then we're gonna return the string. If it's none, then we have to, whoopsie, then we have to perform a little bit of malarkey on here, and then finally we're gonna do that, right? So here we would do something like opt dot replace maybe this will be fine. Actually, this is not a good example. What would be a good example of this one? When we cannot modify something, even though we know, it might be because we're calling replace here. And then here, we can still do that. What would be, where is it that we can't do? We can't mutate the option while. So we couldn't do this. This we cannot do. No, we can do this. I shall stand corrected. I didn't think we could do this. All reds. Oh man, a tactile maybe, but linear, they just feel so squishy to me. I was passing in a buffer of characters and parsing it into structure which held a string. So that buffer, instead of copying. Yes, parsing is a classic one. After the scope, I attempt to borrow again. The buffer I expect to be freezes ahead to pass the lifetime to all the functions in the parsing. Yeah, it could just be that you are, by using that, you are changing the lifetime of a value or otherwise. I think looking at the code would certainly highlight that. I'm kind of intrigued now. Does Rust use a virtual machine? Not really. it's outputting at the end of its chain, TK, it's outputting LLVM intermediate representation, or LLVM IR, which is then used by LLVM to compile the binary. So there's no virtual machines in there, right? Well, technically, so is C#, but that uses a virtual machine, or actually, it's using a CLR, right? Okay, so I failed to reproduce the example, but if we look at something like Rust Polonia's blog post, we might find the examples in here. No, this is a classic one with a hash map, which we are using the entry for. I was kind of hoping that this thing... Oh, okay, here's another one, because we're using this in a loop. But the long and short is some of these issues will disappear with the new borrow checker, but we are nowhere near having the new borrow checker, right? So let's just get rid of that thing for now. Sounds good, Wire. The moment you've done that, I should be able to run the extras code. And this thing should not take 1 second to scroll down once you have that in place. I look forward to that. Still not getting the advantage of Rust. Okay, so there are a common series of bugs in programming which has to do with using memory after it's been freed, having dangling pointers, writing to the same memory location at the same time from different threads. All these issues are prevented in Rust. So that would be the advantage of Rust over a language that do not offer these features, right? That would be the advantage, one of the advantages of Rust. There are other advantages as well, like the type system is pretty amazing and so on and so forth, right? Such as Java. No, Java is a garbage collected language. So Java doesn't really fit in the same space as Rust. Java needs to have the JVM, the Java virtual machine, to run the code. And when you allocate values in Java, the garbage collector is responsible for freeing that memory. In Rust, you don't have a garbage collector, but you also don't manage the memory manually if you don't specifically want to, right? So you have the benefits of something like Java when you have a better type system than you have in Java as well, right? So you have a really good type system, and you have the memory safety, and it's a compiled language. So these are the advantages over Java, for instance. Learn the pain, embrace the pain, so you can then embrace the fix, right? Rust and C is overrated. Rust is just C with training wheels, okay? We know this to be true. We're going to get rid of Kent, of Canterbury Tales here. No, I think Rust is unnecessarily complex if you're not into that. I wouldn't say that Java is garbage, but I would say that it's rubbish. No, there's a lot of really good software written in Java that we use today, like Log4j. No, Elasticsearch is one of those traditional applications written in Java, pretty damn performant and widely used and abused by Amazon, right? Just use Kotlin. You're still using the JVM, but you're getting a different syntax on top of it. Interestingly enough, the specification for JVM is open, so anyone can implement their own Java virtual machine, and the specifications are simple enough that one person can understand and implement it. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a weekend project, but The specifications are there, so you could just read the specification and build your own JVM if you want to, right? I think you have higher portability of Java over C#. If you ask me personally, I'd write C# over Java any day of the week, but I think Java is more portable than C#. Microsoft has quite recently expanded C# to run on other architectures and not architectures. There's on Linux and other operating systems. Rust for JVM. How you doing, Russ? I won't ever get out of memory when using Rust. I don't know who told you that, English, but you certainly can run out of memory, right? Just because you're not manually freeing memory doesn't mean that you can keep allocating memory without repercussion, right? You understand how a computer works. If you allocate more memory than you have, then yes, you're going to run into an OM. Now, on my machine, and most likely yours as well, the operating system would shut down whatever it is that's running trying to do this, but you certainly can, right? There is no such guarantee in any programming language that you can't get an out-of-memory error one way or another, right? Because you can allocate memory in practically all languages, right? Someone is already making Rust for the CLR. I saw that. It's pretty funny. Someone told you that earlier in this chat. Well, then they were mistaken. You certainly can run out of memory in any programming language that allow you to allocate memory, right? It's just a given. The operating system will prevent you from doing so, though. You can't do null pointer dereference. You can't do double free. That is correct. Things like that. Hello, Crispy. How you doing? You heard happy things about Rust. Nice. Async and lifetime, I understand that. You add one lifetime and then you hold code base and it starts exploding with lifetimes. And even more so, Kargush, is if you're using Tokyo, which has static lifetime bounds on pretty much everything, so your lifetimes are meaningless. Now this is correct, right? Unless you specifically leak the memory, you don't have to worry about that. I'm not sure how I feel about this. It's funny, Russ. You don't have to use it. You don't have to embrace it. Just enjoy it. How can it do what? Memory leaks are generally a dev issue. Memory leaks are not necessarily bad, okay? Memory leaks could be useful, right? So let me give you an example, right? Whenever you allocate a bunch of memory, whatever you put in that memory location is going to have to be freed as well. And maybe it has expensive destructors and what have you, right? So maybe you allocate 10 gigabytes of data in your application, and you fill these 10 gigabytes with really expensive what have yous, right? And when you go to free all that memory, you might run all these destructors and they might be quite expensive. But in reality, you're not actually interested in doing this. You're not interested in running the destructors of this code, right? You're just going to drop the whole thing and let the OS clean it up, right? Then in that case, you might want to leak the memory. Maybe you're allocating a large chunk of memory that is never going to be freed, right? You want to keep reusing this memory. Maybe you're building some kind of arena allocator or whatever you're doing, so you can then allocate something, leak that memory, meaning it would never be freed by the application, and just keep writing into that memory, right? So you never have to track that the particular allocation and deallocation of that chunk of memory. You just allocate and then off you go, right? Hello, Rithel. How you doing? And memory leaks are an intentional thing that you can do in Rust. You're not going to accidentally leak memory. You're unlikely going to accidentally leak memory, but you can do it on purpose. I can't really go back to garbage collector languages or higher level after using C and C++. I understand that. We find what we like. The only other language I would go to is Rust, unless other languages in the space comes out. There are languages coming out that are offering similar, or there was even one language that was claiming to have safe FFI access, but their take on safe FFI was to wrap every single field access in a function. And I feel like that's kind of like duct taping pillows to yourself when you leave the house to be extra safe, right? SIG does not have the same memory safety guarantees as Rust, but these memory safety guarantees that Rust offers you might not actually align with what you care about. So you might not care about these safety features, and in that case, SIG is probably quite fun, right? That is correct. It will be, right? So there are obviously caveats where you have things like you maybe you wrote your own allocator and you run this in embedded hardware, but we are having a general conversation talking about how, like, our generic x86 or 64-bit architecture or whatever, right? So it's all good. I no longer have the coded issue. I have moved on. Want to see a small exploration of their parsing? Go for it, Ithrak. If you do share this with me, I will comment on your code, just so you know. What I can't really do is relax type language. I like the strictness. I agree with you, man. The firm iron hand of Rust will rule us through the type system. Garbage collecting language feels limiting. They can do. It can also be quite relaxing. And on top of this, there are performance benefits to using a garbage collector language in some async context, right? You got a Telecaster? No, I don't know. I didn't know you played. The Wall by Testament. Anything by Testament, Riffle, right? We're in the scheduling realm here. Generic 6502, cool. All right, that was the C64 and A500. What's it? The Moss. No, that was the Motorola 6800. The C64 was the 6502, wasn't it? That's all good. Do you think Rust will become a contender in the embedded world? I think so, Bjorn. There are already signs of Rust. You should make the mandatory jokes now, but there are signs of Rust in the automotive industry where people are writing Rust for cars and such now. Where can I put the code? On paste.modprog.de. But that could be quite relaxing as well. VIC-20. Punch cards. Don't know what Embassy is, but it sounds fun. Okay, so I think we've covered everything. I'm gonna get back into this a little bit, but I will pay attention to chat and see what you guys got going on. So we covered quite a few things here. So it was the question of the opaque flag, whether we do this or not, right? Yeah, I think you probably have quite fun with Zig. Yeah, web dev code would be pretty much a whole lot of nothing, and it's a regurgitation, an exercise in chewing the cud, as it were. Source, I was a web dev. It is really boring. Okay, so the opaque flag here that we talked about, I wonder if we're going to do something with that. Let's have a look. We got Tokyo. So full disclosure here, Ethark is on Linux that the file IO stuff on Tokyo is actually blocking. All right, so we have we do an ls here, which is listing the files. So we're gonna call ls-lk with the path, get the output. We're gonna wait that thing, and then we're gonna ignore any errors, okay? And then we're gonna do string from UTF-8 lossy to string here. From UTF-8 lossy. UTF-7 if you can't type, which is pretty good. So UTF-8 lossy will give you a cow stir. That's what it is. That's what it is. I was wondering about that, but okay. And then we call toString on this thing. Now, technically, you could return the cow stir here if you wanted to. So we have a dir entry. So we have a lifetime. We have the file name and the owner and the size. I think these types already exist in Rust though, but that's fine. This might be an exploration. Oh, right. So it's going to do that. Start with main. That makes sense. Okay. We're going to collect some args, and then we're going to print the args, and we're going to get the first arg as a path. So since we're doing this, right, why don't we just grab this code since we're talking about this now, right? Right, since what we're actually only interested in here is the path, which is our first arg. So what we could do instead is say env args dot skip 1 or nth1 if we wanted to get the second arg. The first arg, arg0, is going to be the name of your application, and then this will be the second one, right? So there is no guarantee that this thing will exist. This could very well be in out of bounds, so we could just unwrap here, and that would be our path, right? So we can do this. That means we can skip that, and skip that, because this thing is just going to print out the args for no obvious reason. This is clearly debug code. Then we're going to call get ls and await that with a path. Then we're going to pass their info. So this one we already looked at. So get ls is this thing. It's just going to call this command and create the string from there. There is no reason to not make this into an own string, because we can see that this thing is going to generate an output that is owned by the function, and there's nothing we can do about that, right? And then we're going to do pass their info, and here we're going to have lines, and this is going to split on new line characters. So we don't actually have to split this on new line characters. We could just call lines here instead, and it would do that for you, right? If we go to Rust and find the lines iterator, so you can call stir lines, which will give you an iterator over all the lines in there, right? And then lines next would give you the next line. So we're skipping the first one. So we'll do the skip thing here, right? We'll do skip 1 here. I do believe that we can call skip on an iterator. Yes, we can. So we're just going to skip 1, which means we don't have to do this thing. They're going to map the line to this. And we have our mutable reference to words. So if we do this, then we can get rid of the mutability here, okay? So we don't need that, all right? So something not being marked as mutable does not mean that it's never going to change, because we have things like interior mutability through refcell and mutex, but it does reduce the surface. On one end, it can lull you into a false sense of security, and then the mutability will pounce on you while you're sleeping. On the other, it's less things to look out for. It's less things that can change. If you see a variable that is not declared as mutable, then, and you know the type of the variable is not something with interior mutability, you know that it's going to stay put, right? It's not going to change. So again, we're going to do this with an iterator. So we're going to split this. We're going to clone this NBs, not the bene, but I guess that's not it. So we're splitting this on white space, and then we are counting this thing. So this is cloning the iterator and not the line, which is good. And if there's 0, then we're going to return none. Okay, so let's see. We're going to split this into words. And we're counting the words. I don't know what NB stands for, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. It's to skip the empty line in the dir output. Oh, really? In that case, you could just do a line.trim dot is empty instead. And we say if, oh my god, if this is empty, then return none, right? Then you don't need any of this, right? Well, you still need the words, but you don't need the rest. I need to split on the white space to get... But this one doesn't do, and it just checks if there are 0 words in there, which would mean that there is nothing. So this thing still looks right to me. We say if this is empty, after we trim off any white space, then we're good to go. I don't even know if we need to trim the white space, but yes. So we can get rid of this thing, and then the owner is the second one. And the size is the third one. So I kind of feel like we can do this, and then we're gonna skip the first one. So we'll do a skip one here, and then this could just be next then, right? And then all of this could become next. But the order is important here. And then we're gonna return this. And we're going to filter on maybe... so since we're going to filter on maybe is some, we can change this to a filter map instead. So we don't need this line. And then we don't need this line either, because we're filtering on the filter map's going to return only the sums, right? So this will reduce some of the code. So we can reduce all that code to just this. That it might be, Itharak. You might very well be right on that when it comes to generating these things. I don't know if this... Okay, so what about this thing? This one's going to take a string, a size, and an owner. And this is all coming from this. So on my computer, this wouldn't compile because we're omitting lifetimes here. We have a lifetime. We say that this function has a lifetime annotation of tick A, right? Or A prime, right? But we're not using this anywhere. So this should technically look like this. However, you don't need that. You can use an anonymous lifetime, but you should annotate the lifetime. For anyone reading the code should know that the dir entry has a lifetime, even if the lifetime itself isn't actually relevant, right? So we have new and new stir, and we're calling new stir here. So this can fail to parse, right? Fair enough. So this thing can fail to parse, although maybe it never will, but it could. So technically, I wonder if it would make more sense to do size.parse here. .ok question mark, and then just get rid of this entire function then. Don't need it. By doing this, we're trying to parse this, which means it's going to give us a result back. Then we're going to call OK on the result, which converts the result into an option. As we're returning options from here, we can use the question mark operator. So I think this probably... This probably is it. We could do an additional filter up here where we say line.trim is empty, and we put a not here. By adding this one line, we can get rid of all of these lines. Although technically that will operate on every line. Oh, but so will this anyway. Now, I think I would do this because it reduces 3 lines into 1 line. And we can get rid of it's a very uncomfortable gesture. It looks rude, but it's not. But it's very uncomfortable, right? It's the ring finger. So I think maybe that would that's probably what I would have done in this case. Make sure the line is not empty. Oh, bean juice. You don't need filter map now either. That's a very good point, except we're using the question mark operator here. So we technically need filter map. I don't trust you one bit. Of all the people in this chat, you're the one I trust the least. And that is self-inflicted. Welcome to the Discord, by the way. Okay, so I think there's not really much else to say here other than this. Since we're returning an IO result, we could return a bot. You know what? No, we're not going to. Right. Do you have the column rule at 80? Yes, I do. Clear, trust Skylar the most, right? But this is, so that's it. That's all to say. But you don't need core stir for any particular reason here. You're not referring to stir by any means, so that can go away. Is 8 the default? Why is that your choice? It keeps me on my toes. If the text is starting to go far away from everything. And when I'm running this thing full screen, it's enough for me to keep 2. I could not see the whole buffer reference in that struct after parsing. It had live scope. I was trying to hold the whole buffer in a struct as well as the dir entries. Yeah, you can't borrow from self while you're mutating self. And if you are storing the dir entries, that means you're storing a collection. You have to build up that collection from something. Well, you could, but you couldn't borrow the entirety. You couldn't have a function that operates on dir entries, because a function that takes a mutable reference to self would prevent self from being borrowed, given that you are... maybe I can demonstrate this in a way instead, right? $80 times 25 is the old terminal layout, but my max character weight is not at 80, right? BT 100. Oh wait, hang on. Personal attacks, BNGs? I thought you were better than that. I have to ask Etherite, what do you mean by life scope? Because that's, you've mentioned that a few times now, and life scope doesn't mean anything to me in Rust programming. A prime TK. Yeah, okay, so lifetimes. That's what we're talking about. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so let me see if I can show you an example of what I'm talking about. So we can do that in here. This is compiling. Yes, cool beans. Okay, let's say that we have a struct here called parsey, and we're gonna store the source that we're gonna parse on here. And that's going to be a string slice. We're also going to store our entries in here. That's going to be a vec of entries. Now, we don't actually have an entry type, so we're just going to use a unit here, right? And then we have a function called parse that's going to get an input. That is a string slice. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use we're going to use the source now. So we're going to start off by having parsey. That's going to be parsey, where the source is our input and entries is just a vec of nothing. And so far, so good. Now, let's add an impl on... Actually, this isn't going to be a problem because we're only going to mutate entries. It's the second thing I got to show today that I've forgotten. Be the works per lines. A vec of stir. Like so. So we can get our lines here. But the problem isn't going to be here. So far, we don't have a problem. So far, we don't have a problem. The problem comes when we need to borrow from here. Then we might end up in a situation. So if we say for line in lines, doesn't have to be mutable, then we can do parse. This has to be mutable if we're going to perform any operations on that, right? Whoops. Parsey dot entries dot push. But we're supposed to have like multiple of these things, right? If you try to borrow from here without there being anything in there, doing something like this is a vec, and we're gonna do parsey dot entries dot push the root, and then something like that. This is... but the source is not a problem, right? It would be if you have a function on parsey that will borrow. So impl source parsey. And then we have something like the last entry here. And that will return a mutable reference to a vec of stir. If we did this, and then we're going to return self.entries, and then we just have to get the last one here. So I guess what we could do is just call last mutes and unwrap on that one. So if we did this and we try to modify at this point, so we do something like root is going to be parsey.last. Now we have a problem because through this function call, through this function call, we have borrowed self mutably. So we wouldn't be able to. So if we do something like root.push line, okay, and then while we're doing this thing, we would try to do parse dot. You had 0 mutable references. In that case, you did not have a lifetime issue. All right. I am reasonably confident because the lifetime issue will only happen when you have mutability here. And that's not related to this lifetime. That is related to the fact that we would borrow self mutably while trying to manipulate self through some means or other, right? Like doing something like parse dot entries 0, right? This cannot work, right? But for this to be a lifetime issue, you would have to change the lifetimes. Maybe if you didn't have the lifetime annotation on there, it would be a problem. Then you must have had different lifetimes on them. But you said the new function, and the new function, this thing could certainly hold the source as its input. That would not be a problem. It was the same. With no mutability in there, it's not a problem. I wish we could see the original code, but it isn't a problem. The lifetime stays the same. You can do that all day long. You can, as long as you don't have a mutable reference, you can borrow from here all day too. But if you manage to generate something, it's all good. If you manage to end up with that again, please let me know, because it is an interesting one. But the code that you have here is fine though, right? There's nothing inherently wrong with this code. All I found was like little nitpicky things to talk about, but the rest is fine. Whoops. Oh, I never saved it, that's why. Cool. It certainly is, Lance. Filter map is really good. If you want to know about all the beautiful iterator adapters that we actually have, you can find them here. I lie. I wanted to see the iterator. Here we go, right? So there's lots of things. A lot of these are lazy, meaning you can call copied, which will copy every element in the iterator, but only as you iterate, right? There are things like count, however, that will evaluate the entire iterator, but it will say so here, right? I think this is probably one of the better things to blast through. You can ignore the nightly stuff, and array chunks is also nightly. And by ref is useful if you don't need to, if you don't want to clone the iterator. Cloned will clone everything. Chain means you can put two iterators together, which is very useful. So you can chain two things. You can also call zip on these things, but the reason I mentioned zip is because we have a zip in the iter module that operates on things that implements into iterator instead, which is a lot nicer than having to write out all the stuff, right? So this one is actually quite simple, okay? For this one to make sense, Itharak, we need to talk about ownership, though, right? So let's say we have a function called main. We can have main 2. There we go. So if we have something like strings, that would be a vec of strings. Too many brackets. Okay. Now, if I call for s in strings.iter, I am going to end up with a reference to a string, and I can call this as many times as I want to, right? However, if I go, so I have a reference to a string, if I call into iter here, I now have an own string, and I can no longer call these things because I've taken ownership of it. That's it. That's all there is to it. Into iter will take ownership of the collection you're going to iterate over, whereas iter will iterate over references to that. And of course, there is one more to add to this, which is iter mute, which will give us mutable references, right? That's it. Now, if this thing was a copy type, this into iter wouldn't be a problem. So this won't compile now, but if we change this to, whoopsie, if we change this to a copy type, no, it's still gonna move and consume the vector. Silly me. We could use copy there, but yes. I was wrong. Don't tell anyone. Very clear, very good. We need an into iter mute unwrap function. I think we're good for now. Okay, so where are we at on our plane of existence here with our bugs? Yeah, the opaque flag. So should we have an opaque flag, and should we maybe make attributes a little bit more generic? That is the question. Oh my, okay. So there is no into trait stuff. I don't know what you mean. Ownership of a Twitch subscription, togglebit channel to be exact. It creates an iterator, into iter does some into trait magic. Okay, so iter creates an iterator over references, whereas into iter takes ownership of the thing you want to iterate over, right? So it's about references, mutable references, and ownership, right? It's very simple. Why is it called into iter? So there are a bunch of naming conventions for Rust. I wonder if I have them on a link to them on my website here. Learning Rust API guidelines here. So when it comes to naming, you can see a little table here which has as, to, and into, right? So this is why it's called into iter, because you are taking ownership of this thing, right? Anything that's called to could be considered expensive, and for instance, this would take a string slice and convert it into an own string, right? As in to string, right? Or I was going to say into box slice, but that is an into, obviously. So to string would be an example of this, right? Asref would be a cheap one like as would be a cheap one like asref or whatever, right? So these are the sort of naming conventions that you have. You actually have the examples here, right? So calling as bytes on a stir is very cheap because a string slice is inherently just a byte slice under the hood, okay? So if we look at the string type, I don't think we can actually look under the hood of the string. Well, we can look on the actual string though, because a stir is like a string but owned. So in our case, we have a vec of U8. For a string slice, it would be a slice of U8, right? So getting to the underlying bytes for a string, for instance, by calling as bytes is simply just returning a reference to the underlying byte storage, right? Which is very cheap. From into, well, from into traits have functions called from and functions called into respectively. There is no into string or into foo or into bar for the from and into traits. They are specifically from and into. There's nothing dictates the incurred cost, whereas these names do, right? Because it's impossible. Since there are trait implementations, you cannot tell whether the implementer of said trait is going to perform an expensive operation or not, right? That is simply not possible to know, right? Okay, so let's go back to the opaque flag. Actually, we can do this one now because this one is such low-hanging fruit. Hang on, does someone want to do a bit of work on anathema? I think this thing is probably the lowest barrier of entry to fix if anyone's interested in submitting a PR. So I'll leave this one as a good first issue for someone else who wants to take it. Nah, Skylar's got better things to do. Skylar's supposed to fix expressions RS. So it's legible. Actually, it's legible, but so it makes sense. Okay, so maybe this is a 3-character fix. It kind of is. It's a very simple fix. I will show this fix, but I will not implement it myself. Oh, maybe, hang on. It looks like the fix has already been implemented. No, it should apply here. Yes, there is no tickets, Dottie, but feel free to give it a go, okay? So let's look at the bug in question. Drawing outside of X and X coordinate is wrong. It wraps around. This is most likely because we don't check bounds. We calculate index and check length. Okay, so this is doing the correct thing here on put. We're checking that the position is within the confines of the canvas, and then we convert it into an index. However, Dottie, we don't do that on remove, we don't do that on get mute, we don't do that on get. So in the event of the X and the Y coordinates being outside of the size, we should return none here and here and do nothing here. Other than that, I think that's all there is to it. So I will write this up on Discord, right? I'll write this up on Discord, Dottie. I'm going to write it here for all of you to see. This is for the following functions on the canvas widget needs to check that both X and Y chords are inside the width and height of the canvas. Yeah, I will do that. So it's going to be get mute and remove. Wait, do I have this open in 2 places? Yes. Get mute and remove. See the put function for details. I think that's probably sufficient. Get mute, remove, and I think that's it. Yeah. So I'll drop this on Discord. And we'll assign this to Dottie. Start a thread there. There we go. And I add you on that one. There we are. Okay. Just fixed it? Well, that's too bad, Skylar. It wasn't assigned to you. There's a lot of farming now. This is why it's important to have ownership of issues. Okay. Okay, so then it's about maybe do you want to tackle the opaque flag then, Skylar? Do you want to tackle this thing? Doubly linked fix, yeah. So we have some, maybe we need to fix the maybe we have to fix the issue, organize the don't see it's used, honestly. Well, if you want to draw an opaque window on top of another one, how would you do that? So let's get the ROM crate open. I don't know if ROM is even watching this stream anymore, but they are the reason why we have a ROM. So if you want to draw on top of this thing, let's go into template again. Just whack a doodle, a few doodles in there, right? And then we're gonna float the widget here. Position. And we say left 1, top 2. And we're gonna have a border. We're gonna have some padding. Inside the border, we have a padding of 1, sufficient, and we have the text, floaty boy, here. And we're gonna make this thing have a background of blue, dabba-dee-dabba-doo, right? Okay, and we're gonna have a foreground of black so we can read the text, right? So this thing is including the text from underneath, Skylar, and I think in most cases that is not what people want. I think people would be a lot happier if it didn't do that. So if we did something like height is going to be what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And width is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, right? Is that right? And now if we put an expand in here and we say fill this with an empty character like that, I think that's what people would prefer. Put a fill, yeah, but putting a fill in there would mean, well, either we create another widget, we can do that, or we have the opaque flag on there. We could have another widget that just does the fill. I have pseudo opacity, yeah. Doubly linked list wrapped in ghost cell and static RC. I know of ghost cell, but I don't know about static RC. What is that, Crimson? But this thing will cease to function as you want the moment you get rid of this constraint here, right? This thing will now take up all the space of the VStack because it exists within the VStack. If we move this thing outside of the VStack, we made a C stack up here. We are in for a delicious treat now. And then we move this thing, whoops, in like that. It did not break the way I expected this thing. Why are you not breaking? Is it? Because it's going to be sized around this biggest child. All right. Either way. We don't have a fill widget though. Really? That's kind of cool. I did not know about this one, Crimson Mana. I need to briefly pop open the source of this thing. I see. It's using const generics for this. Interesting. Unless static is so... it's been around for so long. Introduce the fill attribute for all elements. Oh, that's an interesting take. Okay. Maybe we need to have a conversation about that. Do we want a fill attribute for all elements? Let's have a look at the fill attribute implementation on the expand widget. It's that simple. It's just going to do that. So why not have it customizable? That is a good question. I think maybe you're onto something. Maybe we add the fill attribute to everything. So we could lift this out of here and just smush this into the widgets themselves. In here. We could do that. Okay, I think maybe we do that. So instead of fill, add a fill attribute to all widgets. This will fill all the space with a given character, just like the expand widget does. Remove the fill functionality from the expand widget. Do you want to do this one, Skylar? Then we don't need that. Yeah. I'll dump this on the Discord. As per usual. If you have any questions, well, I'll just start a thread, right? Starting a thread for the task. We're being very mechanical with all this stuff, but that's very nice. But then what am I doing? All right. Shall I just go and have some tea then? Is my life over now? That was a bit dramatic. Yes, the future is now, old man. Okay. Well, we have a PR to review, so we can do that now. Look at that. We reached 200 stars on GitHub. It's the weird hide cursor bug on Windows fixed, by the way. It should be, Space Nerd. It should be fixed a while ago. Can I just see the files here? Oh man, this blah. Okay, this code is need of fixing. So what are we missing before we make this official? Yeah, in that case we can start with the state. Oh, okay. State prefix in template. Need to decide what to do with. Oh, thank you, Enrico. Yes, my life at value. All right, so need to decide what to do with. I should also merge attributes into state, right? Globals, attributes, and states. The components should no longer have external state. This should be rolled into attributes, and the attributes should be accessible in the template. That is correct, Dolly. I still haven't added a contributing file either. So this one is going to be quite chunky. This will land us having, this will result in the templates having at least 2 prefixes, state dot and attributes dot. Now we could roll these 2 into the same one, but I don't think we want to do that. I think having the separation, that makes it possible to know what we're overriding with. But this also becomes a little bit annoying because in the past, or I say in the past, right now, today, you can write, and maybe this is a mistake, because today you can write this. You can write my component. And then you can say that X is 1, 2, 3, and then inside my component, we can say that the value is inside my component. We can now say that text has X, but we can also have a state for my component, which would be a struct state, some state, right? Right, so since we can do this, right, it's to be able to prototype, well, it's not just prototype, to be able to build rich applications inside a terminal with very little friction. I still haven't come up with a good demo. Hello, Al. How you doing? I feel like that's the name of a sitcom. My pal Al, and then like you like this quirky person who comes in and then kills everyone in the room. The sitcom was a bit dark. That's why I never add. Okay, so. Well, I've written quite a few applications already being used, but I don't know. That's a good idea. Yes. I'd watch that. Hey everybody, it's Al! And everyone's just trembling in fear. Okay. Now, if we do this, if we do away with this and we make this part of the attributes by simply changing this, then this is no longer going to override your input, right? That's a good question, Leonard Elite. I do think that we can go to GitHub and find base core. I have no idea how this works though, right? I don't know how you upload. Just look at the battery. Okay, well that's useful. I don't honestly know, Land of Leads. I don't know where we do the actual I don't know where we do the upload from. Yeah, no, this is available, right? You can just grab it here. Flash DeFi wireless update firmware. So I guess what you end up doing, Lana Delete, is building. If you can call this, then, which obviously you could, then yeah, you could flash from, no, hang on. This is update firmware. That's probably not what you want to call. There's got to be somewhere in here where you like send the device manager, maybe. Connect the device. Send data and send raw data. Yeah, I guess you could, right? Oh, it's just some random YouTube thing. Oh, that's what cool. Yeah, I guess you could, right? I guess you could do that in Anathema. Okay, I'm being told I have to piss off now. That's how loving my wife is. It could be, right? So we're gonna raid Kuverman now. He's doing Rust. Okay. So I think we have to figure this out, because the moment we do this, we can no longer override values like this. So we have to do something like state.x or, but we can't really do an or because that means something else, right? Right. So this is a little bit difficult. Anyway. You guys have been wonderful. Thank you for all the subs and all the support today. Much obliged, right? We're making some good progress. If we figure this out, then after this, I think we'll release it. Pinky swear this time. All right. Cheers, everyone.